The Beast of Tuksa, written by Trent Kanuga and Elizabeth Moon. Chapter 13. Secret of the Maze. The trail quickly disappeared and left them scanning every direction for any evidence of Mao or the monster. Trying to shake the feeling of desperation, Olaf yelled out the name he had given the magical child, a gift from the sky and the constellation from which he fell. "Mao Tenza!" he shouted with all of the air he could let out, but only silence greeted him. He fell to his knees, looking for any clues. At that moment, a deafening shriek echoed across every inch of the forest. It was a sound like he'd never heard before, and it sent a chill up his spine, making his hair stand on end. Then a second sound, an agonizing scream, a fierce howling of writhing pain. "Mao, hang in there! I'll find you!" Olaf ran as fast as he could in the direction of the scream with Bartol right beside him. Lifting large splintered logs from their path, they shoved aside anything in their way with renewed strength. They approached the source of the cry, and it stopped them dead in their tracks just behind some overgrown shrubs. He grabbed his chest at what felt like acid burning through his lungs from the sprint. He gasped in staggered breath. His eyes widened to make sense of what he was seeing. In the small clearing lit partially by moonlight, he could make out a large mass in the center surrounded by swirling, jerking dark tendrils. He strangled his hold of the machete, knuckles whitening as he looked on. Had his worst fears come true? He scanned the clearing, but the boy was nowhere to be seen. Slowly his eyes started adjusting to the dim light, and he could see the dark mass was actually two figures next to each other. Now both forms lay motionless, sprawled out with one large paw extended, wrapping around a tree trunk. Pushing past into the opening, the man and his faithful dog approached cautiously, trying to piece together what had happened. He hoped it was not too late. "Rah!" The creature lifted his other massive paw, which startled them, sending them stumbling backwards. It was reaching for anything to brace itself as it was being slowly pulled back, both his claws leaving deep tracks like plows on the field. "What's going on? What's happening?" Olaf asked Bartol, but speaking mostly to himself, his eyes drawn to the massive form being dragged across the forest floor. "How can that be? The book from the wizard's cabin, that's... What's going on here?" On the ground next to Mao's open satchel was the ornate book. As before, it echoed the same strange sounds as back when it was in the cabin, but this time it was getting louder. Gaining his composure, he focused his gaze back to the small figure of Mao, where he lay hunched over, completely covered in blood, limp and lifeless. Olaf ran to him and rolled him into his arms, tears streaming down from his cheeks. He cradled him as he'd done when he first discovered him almost 9 years before. Bartol howled long and slow. It's not my fault," Mao mumbled almost inaudibly. Mao, you're alive!" Olaf sighed in disbelief. "I'm here now. Save your strength." He now saw what Mao held in his hand and pried it loose. It was the blood-stained tooth dagger he had given him earlier that night. Mao had bravely fought the beast, but had not escaped unharmed. There was blood everywhere, and it was difficult to tell which came from the beast and which was the child's. "You're going to be okay," he said, assuring himself as he assessed how badly Mao had been hurt. The young moonkin was bleeding through his torn and tattered shirt, the blood dripping down into the dirt. No, Olaf whispered to himself as he pulled the sleeve open, exposing the gnarled flesh of the severe puncture wound across his chest and shoulder, where the beast had dug in his singular remaining fang. "I should have never given you that dagger. What was I thinking?" Bartol gave Olaf a quick poke on his back. He turned in the direction of the book as the buckle flap opened violently. Its pages with mysterious glowing runes began to glow intensely. Then, a blinding blue light poured out like fingers, grabbing onto the hind legs of the dying beast. The monster squealed and howled as the book squeezed and slowly consumed its prey. The head of the creature jerked up, blood spraying out of its wide gaping mouth as it hissed its final breath. The enormous head and jaws crushed, crumbling into the whirlwind of light as we heard the sound of bones crunch. Olaf tightened his hold around Mao, scuttling on the ground and dragging them both further away from the beast and the book. Every inch of the creature disappeared into the maw of the pages as plumes of blue smoke and flame shot straight up, lighting the night sky like a massive fireworks show. The light flew out in all directions, weaving in and around the trees, dancing on the forest floor in beautiful swirls, clearing the misty fog. Tangled branches lifted off of the ground and reached for the stars. Twisting vines retreated to reveal a beautiful night sky. In the distance, through the tree line, they saw the torches in the great door burst into blue pyres of smoke and ash. Even from where they stood, they could hear the loud clanking sound as the gates began to creak open. The overgrowth that had covered the doorway snapped as the gates separated, clearing a passage where they could see directly to Giant's Crown. There was no time to take in all that was happening around them, no time to waste. Olaf had to act fast. He wrapped his arm under the wounded boy's shoulder. "Mao, you're bleeding pretty bad." The young moonkin didn't make a sound. His face was covered with mud and drying blood. His eyes were wet slivers. Every muscle in his body was limp as Olaf jostled him just like a small sack. "Stay with me, boy," Olaf commanded. He put his hand on his face and pulled his eyes open slightly with his fingers, but the boy gave no response. Cradling his head close to his chest, he began to weep quietly. "Don't leave me, boy. We're almost out of the forest. We're gonna make it." Olaf? Mao whimpered. He opened his mouth but struggled to make a sound. Mao, what is it?" Olaf gasped as he leaned in closer. Did I get him? Was that the great beast? The beast of Tuksa?" "You sure did, Mao. We're safe now. Everyone's safe now. You saved us." Mao raised his arm to Olaf's shoulder and gave it a tap. In a faint voice he whispered, "I might. Could you carry me, Dad?" Epilogue. Amiku loved his morning walks now. The night of the big flash changed everything for him. He still knew how to get around undetected by anyone who'd wandered into the forest, day or night. Everyone felt safe now that the beast of Tuksa no longer haunted the once dark forest. And now that the curse was lifted, he was free to leave this place for good. But it was the only home that he'd ever known, and it had become a haven for him. The dark forest was now a happy place for exploring and hiking. All of the evidence of the terror it represented disappeared overnight, including the cabin. The book was all that remained of the wizard, his friend and maker, which he kept in his new home, in a tiny cavern hidden behind the floodgate and nearly impossible to reach. Amiku was never lonely now with so many visitors in the forest. Carefully, he'd follow them and listen to their conversation as if they spoke to him. "So what did the beast look like?" a small boy asked his father. "Oh, he was not much bigger than you, but they say he fell from the night sky and brought horrible curses just with his evil stare." "Why would he do that?" the boy asked, fearfully grabbing hold of his father's hand. "He couldn't control his own powers. Evil flowed through the beast of Tuksa, and the brave townsfolk had to get rid of him, or he was going to destroy the whole village. After he died, the curse of the dark forest disappeared, and now it's safe for all. But legend has it that if a boy disobeys his father, the beast of Tuksa will come back and take the boy away into the night." "No, Papa, that's not how the story goes." "Ha ha ha. I'm just saying what I heard. So just to be safe, you better be a good boy." The story would be told just like that for hundreds of years, and the boy that little Amiku came to call his friend, the boy who saved his forest, known from then on as the Beast of Tuksa, would go on to change the fate of all of Speria.